Right, folks, it's Pipers'Persuasion again, episode 99. And the possible title for this one is RCMP Pipes and Drums. And why? You'll soon find out. It's the usual quality, very high quality. You're going to enjoy it. And you'll soon see the reason for us introducing this particular topic on this episode. The RCMP, one of the most outstanding organisations in the world. Their precise appearance and conduct inspires confidence that they will deliver whatever hardships and difficulties they may encounter. A few decades ago, they decided to up their presentation by adding pipes, drums, and dancers to their public persona. Today, we're all going to discuss this and a wee bit more. We're sure that you will find it enjoyable as usual. So just relax and just watch it go with the flow and see how it goes. I'm going to introduce the folks one at a time here. We've got three people on board. And they are speaking to you from Canada, and their late morning, they can describe that themselves. The first one I'm going to speak to is Graham Muir. Is it retired assistant commissioner, Graham?
That's correct, Alan.
Yeah. So Graham's going to give us a wee clue as to the thinking, the broad thinking behind the RCMP pipes and drums, how it came about, a rough date, the year, that sort of thing. Just talk generally for a wee minute or two. And if he says too much, I'll just interrupt him. Okay, right, Mr. Muir, on you go. Give us your input.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity, Alan. This is special for us, and I'm not sure how broad your catchment area it is for your audience, but I'm going to assume in the several millions, of course. And for those that are from away, and from that perspective, here we are in Canada. Everybody else, if you're farther east than the Atlantic Ocean, that's away. So RCMP is Royal Canadian Mounted Police, yeah, and we are Canada's national federal police force. And as a historical note, this is of some consequence this year. It's the 150th anniversary of our Corps. That's all I want to say about that for now, but I'll use it as a segue to get us back to the 125th anniversary of the Corps, which was 1998. Now, that was the year that we created this program called Royal Canadian Mounted Police Community Bands of Pipes and Drums, and the national program that we'll talk about. So that was 125th. Oh, you're stopping me already? I'm timed out?
Yeah, no, you're doing great. I had made up my mind I was only going to do a brief intro, and that was a perfect brief intro. And I'm going to bring the other guys on board because I was sitting there 20 minutes later saying, when do I get a wee chance to talk here? Graham Ogilvie, also speaking from Ottawa, as was Mr. Muir. And at what time is it with you there, Graham Ogilvie?
It would be 10:40 in the morning here.
Aye, have you had your breakfast and all that sort of stuff?
Breakfast, and just as you're having unusual warm weather in Scotland for this time of year, we are going up to 33 degrees centigrade here this afternoon. And it's going to be an awful toasty day here in Canada.
Now, you had a long history of piping. I've read your CV, stretching back quite a few decades, and a certain Mr. Muir captured you in a beer tent sometime and persuaded you to come on board. When was that?
Yeah, I've been actually playing bagpipes, or I started learning bagpipes back in 1961, so it's been a long time now. And our friend Graham Muir and our pipe sergeant at the time, Donald Corbett, did catch me in a weak moment in a pub here in Orleans, which is just outside of Ottawa. The original pipe major, the RCMP, unfortunately, after just 12 months, had to step aside. And they asked me if I would take over. And I was the president of the Piping Society here at the time. I had a job, I had a family, and I didn't want to add another thing to my list of things to do. So I gave them a very polite no, but they beat on me for 6 months. And unfortunately, in that pub one day, I obviously had maybe just a little bit too much alcohol, and they convinced me to take over as pipe major. And that was all the way back in 2002.
From what I know of Mr. Muir, is a very persuasive chap. And so that's a nice wee intro from you, Graham, with an AE as opposed to Mr. Muir with an H, like my brother. Okay, what's your story? When did you come to the RCMP Pipes and Drums, whatever?
Well, I actually got involved quite by accident, I feel, but I had been involved with several bands in Nova Scotia through the 80s and 90s. And Graham was about to speak to the fact that the first appearance of an RCMP band, as we know it today, was at the Royal Nova Scotia Tattoo in 1998. And one of the members of the band at that time was somebody I knew who was a police officer, an RCMP officer in Nova Scotia. And she said to me, "It's not right that we don't have a band here." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "I'm going to try to start one. Can I get your help?" I said, "Sure." Well, unfortunately, it was 6 years later, 6 years later, in 2004, that she approached me again. And I was actually on the verge of going to retire from piping. I'd had a pretty full 3 or 4 decades at that point. And she said, "Would you help me get the band going?" And I said, "Sure." So I contacted all the players I knew who weren't active with bands and did not want to compete. And we arranged a meeting, and of the 14 that attended that meeting, 13 became members of the band, and somehow or another I was elected pipe major. And I've been involved ever since with the RCMP.
Great stuff. That's a fantastic intro. And we'll now go back to Graham Muir. Graham, it strikes me that at the core of this, I should really be asking you to define to the people in Brazil, South Africa, Australia, Germany, and various other places that watch this programme, the RCMP, they are a form of gendarmerie. Could you just define that? And also, when you finish, give me a sense or two on that. Tell me the sort of proportion of the pipers and drummers in the band that are serving officers, if any. And if not, what it is as a community band. Could you discuss that, please?
Absolutely. So for those watching, the RCMP, it's our national police force in the range of 30,000 strong in a country of 40 million people. It is unique in many respects, but in one in particular, we are Canada's national federal police. We are also the police of jurisdiction in all but 2 provinces or territories in Canada. So we do the provincial, territorial, regional policing. And we have hundreds of contracts for city municipal policing all across Canada, from very large cities to small communities and unincorporated areas. So we have a extensive presence. I mean, we're ubiquitous. We're like everywhere in Canada. Interestingly, in Ontario and Quebec, we do mostly federal policing, not so much in uniform, but more the detective plainclothes presence. So that's how we function as a federal policing entity.
Would you equate them on the French model? Certainly not the British model of policing. The French model of policing is much as you have described gendarmerie throughout the length and breadth of France, with the exception of the larger cities, Paris, Lyon, perhaps Marseille, and there's another one I forget at the moment, who have individual police forces, but by and large, the rest of the gendarmerie, they operate in France. They operate under the Minister of Interior and also the Minister of the Defence, if you like. They have their own titles for that, but they have two bosses in France.
Yeah.
How's it set up with you in Canada there?
Well, short answer to the question is we are not a gendarme force as would be understood in common parlance in those countries that have a gendarmerie. There is no split allegiance. We, as a federal service, we report to a Minister of Public Safety, and in all of the provinces and territories, we report to the the Minister, the Solicitor General. Clearly and purely a civilian police entity. Interestingly and historically, we're a bilingual country, so Royal Canadian Mounted Police translates in French as Gendarmerie Royale du Canada, which is gendarme. In those days, where we were a deployed field force, mounted in fact, we did have many trappings that were considerably more military than civilian. But that's more of a historical artifact. For today's purposes, we're a large federal civilian police entity.
Okay, and get back to the second part of the question, serving officers, piping, whatever.
So the short answer there is predominantly citizen volunteers, community-based citizen volunteers with a liberal or modest, depending on where you are, spicing or smattering of those who are currently serving members of the RCMP and or retired. And for reasons which I think will become apparent over the course of the conversation, we have managed over the years to attract a considerable number of our fellows, colleagues, men and women from the Canadian Armed Forces. Probably has a lot to do with the fact that as we function, our remit to our organization, the RCMP, a lot of similarities in how we organize and gather, and so yeah, we're richly blessed with citizen volunteers by and large. Not that many serving officers any longer.
That's a commonality throughout the world now with these police bands or whatever, and my own history there. I'd like to go into the uniform. They're very precise about this uniform that the bandsmen wear, and how it should be worn and everything else. Could you mention that, and also the histories of the tunics?
Well, I can, and I want to take you up on that first invitation to tell a wee story along the way if we can. So here's a wee story. It'll be of consequence goes back to the very origins of our program. And a person well known in the piping world, internationally and abroad, Major Archie Cairns, senior pipe major of the Canadian Armed Forces, great friend of the piping community at large, and a man who took up a lot of space when he was at it with us, and in fact, well into his retirement, he was the pipe major of the London Police here in Ontario. When it was time to get started and bringing a vision to reality with the RCMP pipe band program, one of the very first guys I went to talk to was Arch Cairns. He was up piping a contest associated with our annual police memorial service, and that would have been probably 1997, a long time ago, and he was camped out in a hotel room downtown Ottawa. So I just called. I didn't know him well. I was just a young guy getting started. That very early conversation, because he was the father of the Air Command pipes and drums here in Canada, a program that was not unlike what we've managed to form here. And he during immediately following the Second World War, he had a lot of personal experience in the organizational challenges associated with getting something going, specifically to uniform. So let me just give you Cole's notes on that. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police is known the world over for its significant uniform, and I just would describe that as Stetson, brown felt Stetson hat, red serge tunic, boots and breeches, and spurs. And we knew that we were, well, if we had been successful, and after 25 years we can claim some degree of success, we needed to have a uniform which was congruent consistent with our significant uniform, but not to copy it. Suffice to say, the organizational culture of the RCMP has not changed. It is very thick and time-honored and stodgy and stubborn. And they have been and continue to be about big black horses and lances and things equine, the cavalry traditions. So for the idea of pipes and drums to come forward as it did in 1998 as part of our 125th, that was a bit of a stretch. So we kept, and don't just kept, we celebrate the fact that we're the only civilian entity in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police that has the honor of wearing that red tunic, aside from those men and women serving.
Great. And the story about each individual tunic that each bandsman wears, tell us about that again.
Well, okay, so the times they are a-changing. Predominantly to this day across the country, our pipers and drummers, men and women, they wear gently used tunics, for the most part, that have been harvested from members of the RCMP that have retired. And we have ways and means of doing that. But if you were to go down to our quartermaster stores, any one band, you would find hanging in various sizes, from my good friend McLeod used to say, from munchkins to mutants, large to small to large, tunics that have been in circulation before. And so we take them and we're proud to have them. And oftentimes we make sure that the guys and girls that are giving them up put a little note in the pocket so we know where those sources have been. Yeah. And the only thing we do to those tunics, Alan, is much like the military has done in the Commonwealth for many, many years, is we cut them away at the bottom to accommodate the sworn, raise the hem a bit, and that's it.
Great stuff. It's very interesting. I know that you told me 10 years ago when we met about the various interesting stories that were in the inside pocket of the tunics, and I thought let's try and bring that one out again, you know. That's great. So you have a band manager and you have a general sort of setup. Can you just briefly discuss the management of the overall management of the RCMP pipes and drums and the individual band management, if you like?
Well, I think, yes, that'll give me an opportunity to give you sort of the overview on a national level. And then, of course, we've got Graham, two pipe majors here, Graham and Wayne, who are the graybeards of our program. They'll tell you about the nuts and bolts of how any one band works. So to the point, it has been an iterative process. I mean, when the idea occurred to us, and me in particular, that in our 125th anniversary in 1998, we could at the very least have a tartan, a unique RCMP tartan, and so we went forward, myself and the Corps Sergeant Major of the day and a small team. We did the consultation required across the country. We made a presentation to the Commissioner of the day and his senior executive. The tartan was approved, and so was a uniform distinct for community bands, pipes and drums, approved by the Commissioner of the day.
Excellent.
So there was already one band functioning in Canada, in Alberta. They had nicely gotten started under the aegis of the commanding officer of the province of that day. And at the same time we got started, there was a change that was occurring in New Brunswick, where then the city of Moncton Police was being taken over by the RCMP in terms of a new contract arrangement. So we actually absorbed the Moncton Police Pipes and Drums as a sort of the second crown and the jewel of our national program, if you want to call it that. And then on we went. And so and then we got busy in the early part of 2000s, and most of our bands were formed then, those very early years, 2000, 2001. Ottawa came aboard, and it wasn't long before we had, I'll go from west to east just to give you a sense of it. We have a band in Vancouver, British Columbia. We're in Edmonton, Alberta, Regina, Saskatchewan, the home and the cradle of the RCMP, Winnipeg, Manitoba. And of course, now we're in central Canada. We have a band here in Ottawa, right next door, Montreal. We have a small band in Montreal. as I said, Moncton, New Brunswick, Halifax, Nova Scotia. There could be a small story relevant to this interview, but you'll have to chase down Wayne Moog on that. Chances are we're going to add another jewel to the crown here before this conversation is over. So that's the national program, but it wasn't enough to have it because you had to build it. There was a lot of busy work going on, and we needed to speak amongst each other. Now that we'd captured the attention of the force and had the authority to proceed, how would we organize? And that was organic, Alan. It wasn't complicated. The guys and the girls that wanted to see this succeed on an individual basis, we all threw in, and we just formed a national working group. And as that working group got busy, by about 2008, we were mature enough in our terms of procedures. By that time, we were meeting like a board, a board for the national program. 2 representatives from each band, senior people. We looked for people that were performing and parading like the drummies and the pipies. And we built our policy, national procedures and program standards, all of that, from music to dress to all things relating to standards, including conduct. We built that on the fly. So after 25 years, the governance of our program is quite mature, and to this day it functions by virtue and by way of consensus. We adhere to Robert's rules. We set the agenda. We keep minutes. We have records of decision. We chase and pursue those, and everything that we do at a national level is to make the program in general better, and specifically we live at the local community level, where our pipe majors are very close to the regional or the provincial commanding officers. That's where the quality of the program resides. It can't be a notional thing, although it is nationally, but it's a practical, living, breathing thing at the band level. So I look forward to the next 25 years. I think our challenge there will simply be to make a good thing better. And that will also mean, I think, tightening up our governance and funding, for that matter. And I'll leave Wayne and Graham to talk about the mechanics.
Yeah. One last word. Two last words. One you can dismiss almost immediately. I never heard Toronto get mentioned.
I'll tell you what, Alan, I think it has to do with the fact that you were a wily old copper before you were. And even your interview skills are reminiscent of what old ace detectives used to do back in the day. I'll leave it at this. The Greater Toronto Area, the GTA as we refer to it, is the one place where we do not have and do need to have a band. So if somebody was to ask me what are the priorities of the national program going forward, my answer to that would be get a foothold in the greater Toronto area. It's not as if we haven't had a couple of false starts, Alan, but like everything else, you grow this program, you've got to have people that are got heart and desire and energy to do it. So we'll get there, and it will be. I actually believe in my heart of hearts, I think it matters a great deal for the future of the program that we're well centered in the center of our country, especially in an area that's got such remarkable piping and drumming going on. There you go.
Here's a pipe major for the Toronto band, McDonald.
Yes.
Gold medalist. Gold medalist. Yeah. He served in the CID and he's in personnel. The last time I spoke to him at Oban, which was about a year or so ago. Nice chap. And he looks quite mild-mannered, and he'll probably fit your profile. I'm going to skip the next bit. I'm going right on to Mr. Ogilvie now, And now that I've let Mr. Muir off the hook, I was going to skip a wee bit of your CV, but the other Graham alluded to the Army and the Air Force pipe band, and you had quite an input there before the RCMP.
That's correct. Wayne and I actually go back far enough that back in the mid to late 1970s, we were both at University in Kingston, Ontario. He was the pipe major of the Queen's University Band, and I was the pipe major over at the military college. And when I graduated in 1977, I entered the Air Force and played with Air Force pipe bands most of my life. And so most of the people Graham has mentioned in passing, especially Archie Cairns, he had a big influence on my life as well in the Air Force.
So you brought these influences across with you into your general dealings and how you were working with the RCMP pipes and drums when you were setting up. You had this previous military experience, if you like, and that would help you, no doubt, and the background of what you were trying to do with your new RCMP post in the early noughties.
Absolutely. Probably the biggest thing is I spent 24 years in the Air Force, and I learned how to deal with bureaucracy, and that served me very well when I ended up working with the RCMP.
That's probably your biggest problem, isn't it? Very good. So tell us about Ottawa. I think it was Ottawa that you were involved with the outfit, pipes and drums. Tell us a wee bit about that.
Yeah, in fact, so I'd been in the Air Force and I was retiring, and the pipe major of the Ottawa Police at the time was a super inspector at the time, Inspector Pat Hayes, to become Pat Hayes. And there's a recurring theme here. He caught me at a weak moment in the beer tent at the Montreal Highland Games and suggested
you drink a lot of beer, don't you?
Well, not so much beer, but yeah, I seem to be a sucker for whiskey when it shows his face, and whiskey and pipe bands obviously don't go together, but on occasion. So he talked me into the Ottawa Police Pipe Band, and Graham Muir was with that band at the time, as was Donald Corbett, who I'd mentioned before. And so when the RCMP program started for us, the discussion started in 1998 and the band started in 2000. Our band here in Ottawa actually came out of the Ottawa Police. What we did is we took members of the Ottawa Police Pipe Band and we put red serge on them to allow the band to get started. And there was a 3-year transition that they would step back after 3 years and we would start bringing on our own people to form our own band. And I say this, Pat Hayes was to be the first pipe major, and unfortunately he stepped aside, and we went through this process of getting me involved, and here we are 20 plus years later and still doing the same job.
Quite simple, really, as long as you got a wee goldie and persuade you. But you're stuck the course, 25 years, and the best part of it.
Just about now, and but it's been an amazing story.
What size was your band? The average size, pipers and drummers, how many?
Our band here in the one that Wayne plays for in Halifax, we're very fortunate. Our band here in Ottawa, we've got 45 pipers and drummers, and this fall we'll have 12 Highland dancers who all are experienced competitive Highland dancers. So we're very fortunate. Halifax is about the same, and Vancouver has a good sized band, and then the others vary to smaller sizes across the country. But we're very fortunate here in Ottawa.
I hope you don't have too many tenor drummers clogging up the ranks. I'm not a big fan of tenor drummers, really. Waste of seats in the bus, really. But the dancers are very good. I saw your dancers; they're excellent at Bermuda. Absolutely. Fabulous. So, who looks after the dancers, Graham?
We actually have 2 lead dancers right now, Tina Gripton and Melanie Lemieux. Both, again, are extraordinarily experienced Highland dancers. Tina actually cut her teeth on the RCMP down with Wayne in Halifax, and he taught her everything she knows about RCMP bands, and obviously didn't scare her off, because when she came to Ottawa, she was kind enough to join our troupe, and and lead the dancers. But the thing with dancers, you couldn't do a show without them, because once you've played Scotland the Brave and Amazing Grace, nobody else knows what you're playing. But you throw some really incredible Highland dancers in front, and everybody'd watch you for an hour.
I remember the one that 78th Fraser Herners did years ago, and they had wonderful dancers on stage as well. I think it adds greatly to the presentation of your show, and the public love it, don't they?
Well, the public just, they go wild when the dancers come on. So the dancers get applause, and the pipe band is just there to support them. But it's, and so people ask me when our band first started, why we don't compete. And the answer is, why would we spend 9 months of the year practicing to play for 4 people who don't like you, when we can practice for 9 months of the year and take our Highland dancers all over the world and play for thousands of people who do like us? So yeah, we enjoy the performing. I
am with you 100%, and especially these last few years, I'm dead against band competitions. I just can't. I've had it. I've had 60 years of it. I'm no longer interested. And I love the what you're trying to do. The community bands go out, meet the public, entertain people, play tunes. And you don't need to worry about what the drummers at the back of the band are playing. That's wonderful too, because they just talk about themselves, and it's great. There's no stress or anything like that. And there's no prima donnas there. It just folk play at the back of the band. Great. Fantastic. What type of tunes do you play?
That's an interesting question in our pipe band, because I also tend to be a fiddler. So we play traditional street parade tunes. We try to keep it as simple as possible. So I think probably most of our tunes comes out of Scots Guards 1, because that's what I grew up and I still like. And all the show tunes we do with the dancers all tend to be tunes I play on the fiddle, because I've never seen anybody go to a fiddle jamboree or jam session and not be tapping their toes and enjoying it. So I figure if that works for that, it works for us as well. So it's music that people enjoy, and the dancers enjoy it as well. So it's a win-win.
That is an interesting point that you've raised there, how to play space and reels for dancers. And generally speaking, if you do play the fiddle or that, you've got to give a certain amount of lift into the tunes, and that allows the dancers to express themselves and keep their feet off the ground. Because as soon as they're on the ground, they shouldn't actually be there. That's not part of the thing. They should be in the air all the time, and you should be throwing them up with your tunes and all that. It's fantastic. You mentioned with Scots Guards Book 1. That's excellent. What sort of standard do you think your band is? Say if you were grading them for competition or something like that, what grade would they fall into?
So that's also a question that sometimes gets me into trouble. So both Wayne and I have come up through the competitive circles and have both been presidents of our respective piping societies. So we have our background in that side of the house. The problem is a lot of the people we have in our bands did not come up in competitive bands, so they really don't understand what grades 1 through grade 5 mean. So I now preface my answer with 2 parts. When people ask us what grade we are, I say competitively we play to about a grade 4 level. I said, but as it relates to shows, we play to a grade 1 level, because we put on the most amazing shows, and the audiences we are not judges with their score sheets and looking for every grace note and turlet and everything else you're playing. They're there to see a show. So from an optics standpoint, I tell people we're a grade 1 band. From a technical RSPBA or PPBSO standpoint, we'd be playing about a grade 4 caliber, which is more than enough for the audiences to which we're playing.
Wayne, I'm just going to bring you in here. And the next obvious question here, you get pipers wishing to join your band, and that's terrific. The more the merrier. What sort of standard are you looking for initially, or are you prepared to teach these folks from scratch, or teach them from a certain standard up to a certain standard? How heavily are you into good technical ways of playing doublings, grace notes, or do you just miss them out? Or what happens? What's your attitude to that, Wayne?
Well, my personal attitude is that, well, we won't take beginners. We don't teach just because we don't have the infrastructure available to do that. People in the band are mostly pretty busy. A lot of them are professionals, so they don't have an extra night a week to give the teaching. But we do direct aspiring pipers and drummers to two other organizations in the city that do teaching. And we don't want to compete with those programs anyhow, because those programs are money raisers for the existence of those bands. So
right.
as an RCMP band, we don't want to be cutting the grass on anybody else. But for those that see our band as being a viable option for them, the program has a set of what we call common composite tunes, and basically they're all tunes from the Scots Guards, as Gray mentioned earlier. And if people can play those, they can get into the band and play them well musically. Personally, I'm not a fiend on getting all the doublings in or whatever for a band playing. It's the big black notes played at the right time and for the right length of time. And that's more important to me than having, Mr. Fancy Fingers playing.
What about blowing?
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, what pipe major doesn't stand around and talk about tone, tuning, you're affecting the sound, So yeah, they've got to be able to blow a bagpipe too. But I will admit that we go out of our way, or I did anyhow during my tenure, to give people the opportunity to make it. Practice with us for however long. I've had fellows practice for 2 years and finally not make it, just because it wasn't the standard we needed with the group. But
so you do have standards if we're playing. When I heard them in Bermuda, maybe that was your headquarters pipe band, and we haven't explored that one. Maybe go back to Mr. Muir again later on about discuss headquarters bands, what that concept is. But you do have standards, Wayne, and albeit they're pretty sweet ones. But when I heard you, I thought you were somewhere in a grade 2 sort of standard at that particular time. I thought it was very, very nice and well set up bagpipes as well. Good tone, good blowing. There was nothing wild going on, such as you may get in a grade 4 band in Scotland, anyway. I think he played a pretty good standard from what I heard in the past. So I don't think we get in to be frightened about as far as the audience is concerned. And I take Graham's point about the audience is different. They're not there to listen to a competing band. They're there to be entertained by nice tunes and a visual sort of thing too,
That's why we also allow tenor drummers in our band, Alan, because they actually do flourish, and while the band's standing there, the public has something to watch if they can't understand or hear the music properly.
Okay, two, but this concept of 6 tenor drummers.
No, we don't go over 4. 4's our max. That's it.
Well, okay, we'll let you off the hook with that. Just and it's 1 bass drum.
Well, we at times have had as many as 3 bass drummers on parade. My own philosophy is these people want to be in the band. Okay.
Yeah.
You want to parade? Let's not tell them they have to sit in the corner. If they have the ability, get them on the street, and we'll work out how how much weight each player puts on the beat, or who is the lead bass drummer, or sometimes they alternate, for a tune or whatever, and they work it out. The same.
Everybody's having good fun, and they're all enjoying themselves. That's the main thing, How many nights a week does your band practice, or is it once a month, or what is it? How often do you meet for practice?
Once a week is the standard, yeah.
Good. Is that the same with you, Graham?
That's the same with us, yes. During,
Yeah.
if there's peak periods of things we know we're going to do, we might put it twice a week, but our standard's once a week.
Aye. So it's maybe, Graham Muir, could we cover this concept of the headquarters band? What's that about again?
Well, just as a point of clarification, the individual bands report to a commanding officer. Well, it's within our national provincial structure. That's where the business of the piping and the drumming gets done. The reason why we connect to our commanding officers is because we're an extension of the public relations remit of the RCMP. You know, anybody with a passing understanding of public policing in this world will realize, especially in this day and age, they generate a lot of bad news. It's just the nature of the business. So anything the corporation can do to get a positive spin on how things are going, that's what we do. Like we're out, quote unquote, flying the flag and representing the RCMP, and we do that as an expression of our music and dance. Now, so across our national program of 8 bands, the key relationship is the band management team to their commanding officer. But the national program, and we I think we can say safely, we grew into it. We believed at about 2008, 2009 that we had something going on that was like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We weren't just a loose tribe of 8 bands trying to get along. We were one entity called the national program, and we wanted to be able to say that we were plugged in at the national level, and that's where our national headquarters comes in. So we didn't have to shop around for that. At the time that we made the decision, there was a place in the national headquarters where we logically belonged, and that is the executive position for, now known as the Executive Director of National Communications. It was recently Executive Director of Public Affairs, but that's where we've taken our business as a national program. And we've tightened that up too. We have written terms of reference document which describes what that executive position does on behalf of the national program, how it supports us as a collection of 8 bands, and what we do and what our responsibility is in terms of answering to the RCMP with respect to broad questions on standards, international travel, that kind of thing. So that's it's an important touch point for us, and probably that's the rock face that we'll be working on over the next number of years. The bands, in terms of how each band functions, that relationship between the band, their commanding officers, and specifically their sergeants major. We have a national program of our warrant program consistent with the United Kingdom, where sergeants major are appointed by warrant. In this case, by warrant by our commissioner. So much like our band program, that program exists laterally, horizontally across the RCMP, and where we function at the band level, the commanding officers and those sergeants major are gold, and those relationships matter a great deal. At the national level, we have got an executive director of public affairs, and we also have a corps sergeant major. And we work hard to make sure that when we're talking about the RCMP pipes, drums, and dancers, that's where we carry the conversation or the narrative at the national level as opposed to at the band level. And the challenges there, or the future that will be told in coming years, will have to do, I think, more with the business side of it. It's shoring up not just advocacy, what we can do for them, but what in fact the RCMP will do for us in the future with respect to the financing of the program at the national level. So that's a kind of a business note, but there you have it.
That's interesting. Funding, that's a delicate subject. Always is a delicate subject. Is it worthy of a couple of words here? Are you self-funded, or does it come from Ottawa?
So the bands, by design and by definition, the bands exist at the local level, and they're constituted as not-for-profit organizations within their territorial jurisdiction. They can and do use that as a device to raise funds outside of what we describe as the public purse. We couldn't function otherwise. Although it was contentious at the day when we started that, and the RCMP was a bit nervous about that, but it's been a quarter of a century. That's how we roll, and it's well understood that we need to be able to hold a concert, charge a fee, raise some money, take those funds and put it against our operational exigencies, and specifically funding our international travel. But secondarily, and once again, it's taken a while to get there, but and why the relationship between the bands and the commanding officers are as important as they are. We have more than one way of doing it, but for the most part, on an annual basis, we have cases like in Ottawa where we write a business case at the beginning of a fiscal year, and we basically write it down. We tell the commanding officer, "This is what we did for you last year. This is where our financial pressures are, and we would be grateful if you would continue to provide some public funding for us." And we stipulate the amount. And the COs, for at least in our experience, for the better part of our history of our program, have been quite generous. They understand what they're giving us is to support the purchase of spats and kilts, underwrite our travel expenses to a small amount, training, in any event. So it's welcome, and that level of funding is welcome and just enough. Whatever else happens in the future remains yet to be seen. There will not be, though, I think it's safe to say, as was the case in the old days, where large police forces, or in our case, the National Police, where you have standing groups of professional musicians. That's a rarity, and we cannot see that going forward. But what I could certainly see going forward is a better funding structure for citizen groups of pipes and drums that bring hundreds of thousands of hours of volunteer overtime to deliver a sight and sound package, which is invaluable to the RCMP in our case. So getting that squared away going forward the calculus should be to the benefit of the individual bands. And I'm hopeful the RCMP will agree with that.
Wayne, how is your relationship with your commanding officer over at, say, your end of the country?
Actually, it's quite good, and we've been very fortunate with all our commanding officers in the last 20 years. They very quickly saw the benefit of having the band and its positive effect on public relations. And also it provided that bit of pomp and ceremony for regimental garrison activities, changes of command, mess dinners, memorial services, all sorts of events like that. So, they've been great supporters for us.
Graham, Mr. Ogilvie, we're talking about public relations. They don't come any bigger than the RCMP in 2009 participating in Windsor Castle Royal Tattoo. Do you want to tell us a wee bit about that?
That was probably the most outstanding event that we could have ever participated in, and all three of us, in fact, were there. I'd received a phone call from Buckingham Palace. The RCMP were to give the Queen a new horse, police service horse George, and they'd originally hoped to take the RCMP musical ride over to participate in a tattoo, but they quickly realized that taking 36 horses and 36 riders was going to be a little expensive, plus quarantines and everything else was going to happen. So that idea got dropped, and they wondered what else they could do. And the RCMP has pipe bands, so they thought maybe a pipe band could come over. So I had this phone call from Buckingham Palace, asked if he could come over, but if we did, we had to keep it to just 13 musicians. And I balked at that because when we travel with the pipe band internationally, we want to be 40 plus because you want to make a statement. You want to make an impact wherever you go. And 13 people in a pipe band when you're in front of all the Scottish Regiment pipe bands, I thought was going to be rather a little bit embarrassing. So I hesitated but asked why we had to keep to 13, and they had no accommodations available. The barracks already had the cavalry there. There was the fair going on, so all the hotels, motels were full. But they said if you can keep it to 13 people, we have 13 royal apartments in Windsor Castle you could use. And
that's okay.
I said, we could probably do that. And let me work on that. So yes, for 10 days, we stayed in Windsor Castle with Her Majesty and had a wonderful time in the castle. And I don't know how we topped that.
That's wonderful. How did you present your music with the 13 guys?
So we were fortunate. We were actually there as part of the tattoo. So most of what we played was just general tattoo music. And then for the presentation itself, which was the last evening of the tattoo, then we marched both George and his predecessor, St. James. We marched them on to one of the RCMP regimental marches, which is a common tune in Canada called the Maple Leaf Forever. We did the presentation to Her Majesty, and then we marched ourselves back off to the RCMP regimental march. So the actual music that we did for our small part of that ceremony was small and traditional for us. And then the rest of the music we played while we were over there was just the tattoo music.
That's absolutely wonderful. A marvelous experience for everybody who was involved, no doubt. And you have a history, your pipes and drums, with Queen Elizabeth, and I can even I watched the funeral last year, and you were very predominant there, RCMP, and the parade and all the rest of it, and it was very touching. And I understand that you mentioned horses. I understand that they borrow horses here for that particular parade for the reasons that you gave earlier, but shipping them across, quarantine, this, that, and the next thing. But what other times did you play for Her Majesty?
I'm just going to get back to something you just said right now, and I'll let Graham Muir chime in.
Yeah, okay, but
But the horses for Her Majesty's funeral were actually all RCMP horses that had been given to the royal family. So that one occasion, they were not borrowed horses. They were actually horses that had been gifted to the royal family by the RCMP. And a special note on that parade, the lead RCMP member for that parade was Sergeant Major Scott Williamson. He had learned the bagpipes, but given that up after just a couple of years. But he'd actually been the drum major of our pipe band here in Ottawa. So the lead for Her Majesty's funeral and the horse presentation to King Charles III were both done by Scott Williamson. And we had that very deep connection because he had actually been a drum major in our band before we went over there. So we even had somebody from the pipe band who'd been our leader, was leading both those ceremonies over in the UK. So we were pretty proud about that.
Hey, Graham, a word on that subject?
Well, only to say, I think it traces back not just to Queen Elizabeth, but the fact that Queen Elizabeth had a lifelong affinity and affection for all things equine, horses of specific. So as a very young queen and monarch in our country, and before that, traveling through Canada as princess, she took an interest in not just horses in general, but our horses. We were, in fact, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the history that found us receiving that moniker tracks back to South Africa. And as good colonial boys that we were, delivering up the Canadian Expeditionary Forces and cavalry in particular. So we've had that connection to the crown historically since the inception of our country, effectively. And for her to make that connection to us and through our horses was a very natural thing. And, you know, for the viewers, that connection was lifelong for her, and over a large portion of the history of our organization. She was, until her passing, the honorary commissioner of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. We referred to her as the commissioner in chief of the RCMP, an honorarium nonetheless, but it started way back. I mean, it was the first horse that was presented to Her Majesty was 1973, and a wonderful horse called Burmese, who was actually, she buried that horse on the grounds of Windsor Castle. And that was the first of 6, I believe. And so that tradition's alive and well. And of course, Charles was there for most all of that too. And he's a horseman in his own right, carriage driver notwithstanding, but we'll see what the future holds.
And we have had a, so in 2002, Her Majesty was over to visit the stables here in Ottawa. And so that was our first opportunity to play for her in person. And Graham Muir was the drum major for that particular occasion. And then we played for her again in 2009. Wayne and I had the opportunity to go play with the RCMP Horse Guards for the Jubilee celebrations. Princess Anne was over here in Ottawa, and Wayne was involved. He was actually here in Ottawa at the time. And
do you want to tell us about that, Wayne?
Presentation to Princess Anne.
Yes, I had moved to Ontario for, wasn't sure how long I was going to be there, but I moved to a town, my hometown, just south of Ottawa. And so the two Grahams were kind enough to let me to practice with the band and stuff. But it so happened that Princess Anne was coming to Canada and to Ottawa. And we thought it would be, or someone thought it would be nice to give her a presentation of a scarf of the RCMP tartan, which she had officially presented to the RCMP in 1998. So the band, full band, was turned out at the riding stables and played for her as she arrived, and the small presentation was made, and fumbling words were said on my part, and then the band played some more, and off she went. But it was and it was kind of nice because she actually said at the time something to the fact, "Oh, my hasn't been that long." You know, it would have been 16 years or something. She just didn't realize it had been that long, but she remembered. Yeah, I'm what they call a remote player, so I'm not actually in the same physical location as the band. I'm actually closer to the Moncton band in New Brunswick than I am to the Halifax band, so I'm playing with both of them when I can. It's not too often because it's quite a distance to travel and expensive these days as well. And I've probably played more with the Ottawa band this summer than I have with either the Halifax or Moncton bands. It's a 3.5-hour car drive from Charlottetown, where I live, in Prince Edward Island, to Halifax, and of course 3.5-hour return. And for some odd reason, we have to pay to get off the island over the bridge that was built. And then it's a 2-hour drive from my home to Moncton, and 2-hour return. And you know, so it's not an onerous drive, but you have to be. It has to be a pretty significant event.
You need to stay overnight after a band practice, you know.
Well, I don't go to band practices through the week.
No,
what the Moncton band does, and in conjunction with the Halifax band, because they're frequently helping each other out with personnel when they want to put a lot of numbers out. Once a month through the winter, they have a Sunday practice at a midway point between the two cities. And that works wonderful for me because then I can drive over and do the practice and then drive home once a month.
Fantastic, fantastic. Graham, could you tell us about your most recent visit to Switzerland?
We've actually had a busy year. I tell people that we squeezed 2 years into 4 months this year. We started doing a concert, then we went over to the Netherlands for 2 weeks to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the liberation, which unfortunately was 3 years late celebrating it because of COVID. We came home, we celebrated the 150th anniversary of the RCMP, and then turned around and went over to the Basel tattoo for 2 weeks. So it was a busy period. We did Basel last year, we did it again this year, and it's an absolutely amazing tattoo to do. Pipe Major Stuart Sampson, who's the senior pipe major, does a wonderful job of picking music, and it's fun stuff to play, and playing with the brass bands is just until you come back and it's so boring just playing bagpipes again when you have the opportunity to play with that type of ensemble.
Hey, Stuart Sampson, I spoke to him just during Piping Live there a fortnight ago, and I mentioned that you've been across and all the rest of it. And he's been doing that particular tattoo for many years now. He started off with Edinburgh tattoo, military tattoo, and then he took the same sort of concept across to Germany, Switzerland. I think it's been in Italy as well. I'm not too sure, but full-time job organising tattoos. He's a wonderful composer of music and a great piper as well. A genuinely nice chap, you know.
Oh, he's probably he's got both sides. He's extraordinarily competent, and he's the nicest guy you could ever work with. His leadership. And he does write beautiful music, and that's each year at Basel. Last year, we've played a lot of his tunes, and they've been superb. So he's pretty amazing.
Is it full on that I get the impression, I saw the itinerary once, and you're playing all the time, the whole few days that you're there. You barely get a break at all, do you?
Well, the first week is typical of any tattoo, whether it be Edinburgh or Basel, where you're basically working from 8 o'clock in the morning to midnight as you practice and get ready. The second week at Basel, then you're just doing a performance late at night. So you've actually got the morning and afternoons, and they help set tours up for us. We went and spent a day in the Alps, and we have a gentleman in our band who's global affairs, and he's worked at the embassy in Bern before, so organized a trip for us to do there. So the first week is full on work and no break. The second week you get a bit of both.
Wayne, were you at the Netherlands?
I was in the Netherlands, yes.
You want to tell us a wee bit about that?
Well, that was a busy year. The Netherlands, the host body had events planned for us, virtually morning, afternoon, and evening. So we were on the road quite a bit. It's a great opportunity for a Canadian. I've been over once before for one of their anniversary events, and I've always maintained since that time that every Canadian should go and see the manner in which the Dutch people honor the war dead. Of course, we saw mostly Canadian cemeteries, but they do the same, I believe, with British and other American cemeteries as well. But I think the most interesting thing that happened in that event was that we did this concert one night, and nobody clapped after we finished our first after our first number. And what going through my head is, this isn't going to go well. Well, we did the whole show, and it was actually quite good. I mean, the playing was good, and we thought it was fine. We find out afterwards that the audience is instructed not to clap because they don't want to prolong the show at all. They just want you to play, and they'll appreciate. And then when you're leaving, they'll clap at that time. But it would have been nice to have known that before we started to play, because you know how you feed off.
150th anniversary, Graham Muir.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll take the opportunity to simply say we're busy to begin with, but we've been all the more busy over the course of this year, effectively in response to, and some of it's actually iterative. It hasn't been particularly well planned, I wouldn't think, but there's been like a constellation of little and small and large events that have occurred across the country, and our bands have been rising to the occasion. We just finished the Glengarry Highland Games here in close to Ottawa, which attracts a fairly good part of the competitive piping community, well known. And that Glengarry Island Games Committee were kind enough to amplify for us the 150th anniversary of the RCMP. So we took a composite band and our dancers down there, and we performed at the Friday night grandstand show, as they refer to it as. It's just another example, and I'll just take this opportunity to say that Graham and I, we're packing suitcases again today. We're on our way to Regina, Saskatchewan, to our training academy, the RCMP Depot Division in Regina. And once again, I mean, we're one of the probably the highlights, if not the keynote of our 150th anniversary, is the presentation and consecration of our new guidon, which are our regimental colors. In the Commonwealth, we're the only federal police agency that actually has quote unquote battle honors tracking back, as I mentioned earlier, to South Africa, First and Second World War, and we'll be adding Afghanistan this year. But that parade square at Depot will be absolutely full of members of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the guys and girls that are working and celebrating that particular moment in the presentation of our new colors. And we'll have a composite band of RCMP pipes and drums. And you can imagine going past the saluting dais, we'll be 8 across, and everybody in that front ranks will be one of our pipe majors, and they'll be carrying their commanding officers' banners, and it'll be a large group going past, and we will look the part and sound the part. So in the early days where we were kind of an add-on to the RCMP, I would observe, if not argue, that we've earned our way to effectively part of the cultural fabric of the RCMP, much celebrated in that regard. So we'll have pride of place on that square this coming Friday, September the 8th, for the presentation of the Guido. And they will depend on us to do what we're good at, and we will deliver that. And that's I think a good way for me to make a couple of observations on our 150th.
Okay, and the following day you've got your NEC meeting there, annual meeting.
Yeah. So historically, since we got started, we're with nothing else. I think collectively as a group, we're smart enough to take advantage of opportunities as they arise. So we, as any governing board would do, you meet virtually by Zoom or a team, however you do that, but you reserve at least one time over the course of a year while you come together in person. So our National Executive Council, which is comprised of 2 senior members of each of the bands, comes together, and we generate the agenda, or make our records of decision, and our minutes from the meeting. It's all about the governance of the national program, but we do that at a time where there's going to be a gathering regardless. And so in Regina, after the Guidon presentation is done, there will be a national memorial service for our fallen on the square. We got to meet anyway, right? Our national program needs to meet. What better place to do that than where coppers are coming together to honor their fallen, in this case, the RCMP. And so we'll be on parade again Sunday to support that parade. And alternately speaking, we'll do that in Regina. Every second year we come back to Ottawa because there's a national police officers memorial service on Parliament Hill. So we kind of go back and forth one year after the next, depending on where we are. This year we'll be in Regina.
First class. Wayne, a wee bit your personal piping. Do you still enjoy playing in the kitchen or whatever of the house? And when you do that, what sort of type of tunes are you playing in your bagpipe when nobody else is listening?
I still do play a lot, or a bit at home. I'm playing in 3 bands right now on the island. Well, I'm playing the RCMP band off island, but I'm also practicing right now with the College of Piping Summerside band, and so that's a bit of a challenge keeping that stuff up to snuff, grade 3 level. And then I'm practicing with another little local band called the Belfast Pipe Band, which is just folks that want to play music and have fun, non-competitive. So I've got their repertoires to build up and practice. So when I am practicing, I generally pick in the morning I do chanter work, and I'll pick one band's repertoire, and in the afternoon I'll play pipes, and I'll pick that band's repertoire. The next day I change bands, same thing, morning chanter, evening, afternoon pipes, and then the next band, whatever. And then if there's a tattoo or something on, I build, I factor that into to a practice schedule as well. Yeah, I still enjoy it. If I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be doing it. Practice for practice sake isn't a lot of fun. It's practicing for the goal of taking part in these
How about
events.
yourself, Graham Ogilvie? What's your personal piping now?
I actually have 3 seasons. I have 3 seasons. Spring and summer, I play the bagpipes. And strangely enough, over the next 6 weeks, I play drums for a German Oompa band, because now we're going into Oktoberfest season.
Okay, right.
I played drums with them for 25 years now. And then once we get past into that, I'll play fiddle over the winter. And then I'll get ready for the bagpipes again as we get into the spring. So
Wonderful. Keeps you fresh.
I actually don't play bagpipes as nearly as much as I should, and that's not only because I play other musical instruments, but because one of the joys of being in an RCMP pipe band is there's a little bit of administration and paperwork and other things that need to be done that also take up a little bit of time.
I never picked up now, Ed. I take it you're all playing Gore-Tex bags. No, it's none of that sheepskin nonsense that you all have gone back to because it's grade 1 and they're chasing this sound thing. I'm quite happy with my Gore-Tex and plastic reeds, and I defy anybody to tell the difference. I've got the best bagpipe in the world, and you've got to cut out all the variables with cane reeds. What do you think, Wayne? Am I quite correct there?
I'm a big advocate of the synthetic stuff.
Yeah.
It's great if you're not able to play every day. You don't have to worry about seasoning the bag and whatnot, And again, if you can tell the difference between a synthetic reed and a cane reed and a good bagpipe, well, you go ahead and play the cane reed, because I can't hear the difference. And I want this to be enjoyable. I don't want to spend the rest of my piping days doing maintenance and struggling with reeds and that sort of thing. There's enough struggles as it is. And it's ideal for bands too.
Graham, what was your musical expedition here? You played pipes at one point.
Still do. Not particularly well. So I'm a journeyman piper in the Ottawa band, have been since I started. By necessity, I picked up a mace because we had a little bit of military experience on the drill side. So I was by default a drummie for a good while getting our program started. Have since turned that over to other people with more energy and talent than I have. But still there. I mean, my listening to these guys talk about their daily habits with their instruments, and I'll simply say this: my goal is to show up at any given practice, shut up and play, and specifically play well enough that Mr. Ogilvie's not climbing down my throat for the kind of things which I am quite capable of delivering at any given moment. So I test his patience almost on a weekly basis as it relates to my own playing, but I'm there.
You always seem to be enjoying yourself, and really that's the whole point of the exercise. And the point of music is to give enjoyment to your listener, and I'm quite sure you're all doing that. Is there anybody else before I wind up has got anything else that they'd like to say?
I'm just going to chime in with one little thing, because I say this to Graham Muir all the time, and I'll say it to anybody else that happens to be listening. The places we've gone, the people we've met, the things that we've done in our lifetimes, just because we played bagpipes, is the most amazing thing that could have ever happened to us. So we've been very blessed.
And Mr. Muir, I think you would maybe just tell us a sentence for the future of RCMP pipes and drums?
Well, I've kind of let that secret out of the bag. I think we got bragging rights after a quarter of a century of having put together something which is both unique and valued and valuable. What the future holds remains to be seen. My own view is now that I'm hitting 70 here this coming month, this month. I got some little bit of energy left. I'll probably direct that more towards what the future of the national program is. I think in order to do that, I mean, we can't afford to rest on our laurels. Period. Which means that if there's to be a bright future for the next 25, I think we got some work to do. And time will tell. I mean, we've demonstrated ourselves over the years to be caring enough and concerned enough to grow the program to where it is. And I'm hopeful with a little bit of work in the near future, we can shore that up and make it a better place for the younger guys and girls that are coming on, so they can be a part of something and have pride of association with a national program enterprise that is presently doing well and has great potential for the future, according to me, and a little bit of sweat equity.
So there we have it, folks, from Pipers'Persuasion, and I'm quite sure you enjoyed all this information that weren't aware was out there about the organisation of the RCMP pipes and drums, and we've all been privileged today to enjoy the company of Graham Muir, Graham Ogilvie, and Wayne Moogs. And thank you very much for your contribution, and all the best for the future of as people and as for your organisation too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan.
Yep, thank you, Alan.
Thanks.